So now let's proceed to what other factors influence juror judgment. So, are the defendant's attractiveness and similarity to jurors likely to bias them? How faithfully do jurors follow judges' instructions? Yes, a defendant's attractiveness and similarity to jurors can potentially bias their decisions. The attractiveness leniency bias suggests that jurors are more likely to give lighter sentences to defendants they find attractive. Meanwhile, the similarity bias proposes that jurors are more likely to be lenient towards defendants who resemble them in terms of race, gender, or other characteristics. Regarding following judges' instructions, jurors don't always faithfully adhere to all instructions. There might be misunderstandings or even deliberate disregard or instructions, but it's crucial that instructions are clear and understandable to ensure a fair trial process. So, ito na ang the defendant's characteristics. Clarence Darrow, a famous lawyer, believed that jurors are more likely to be swayed by their feelings about a defendant than by the actual evidence presented in a case. So, here's how social judgments can influence a jury. The first is the first impressions matter. Jurors form opinions about a defendant based on how they look and act, even before the trial begins. These opinions can affect how they interpret the evidence. The second is attractiveness and similarity. People tend to be more sympathetic towards those they find attractive or who are similar to them. This can lead to biased decisions, with attractive or similar defendants getting more lenient treatment. Next is the third one is status bias. People with high social status, like wealthy or powerful individuals, are often seen as more trustworthy or deserving of leniency. This can lead to unfair advantages in the courtroom. So, in short, even though jurors are supposed to be impartial, their personal opinions and bias can unconsciously influence their decisions. Next is physical attractiveness. Imagine you're a juror in a trial. You see the defendant and they're incredibly attractive. You might consciously think, wow, they look like a good person. They couldn't possibly have done something bad. This is the what is beautiful is good stereotype in action. We tend to associate good looks with positive qualities like honesty, intelligence, and kindness. So, when we see someone attractive, we might automatically assume they're a good person, even if there's no evidence to support that. This stereotype can have a big impact on how jurors judge a defendant. They might be less likely to believe a beautiful person is guilty, or they might give them a lighter sentence if they are found guilty. It's important to remember that attractiveness alone doesn't tell us anything about a person's character, but this stereotype can be powerful, and we need to be aware of it so we can try to make fair and unbiased judgments. Next is similarity to the jurors. Clarence Darrow thought that jurors' feelings about a defendant could affect their decisions more than the evidence. If he was even a little right, then other things that make us like or dislike someone should also matter. Here are two experiments that show how this works. Political views. In one study, students were asked to judge a person accused of a crime. The students were more likely to think the person was innocent if the defendant shared their political views. This shows that our own beliefs can influence how we see someone else. The next one is language. In another study, people were asked to judge someone accused of assault. They were more likely to think the person was innocent if the defendant spoke English rather than Spanish or Thai. This suggests that we might be more likely to trust someone who speaks our language. This study suggests that jurors are not always as objective as they should be. Our personal biases, like our political views or our attitudes towards different languages, can unconsciously influence our judgments. Next is the judge's instructions. You've probably seen in these movies and TV shows, a lawyer yells objection, and the judge tells the jury to ignore something that was said. So this happens because sometimes lawyers try to sneak in information that isn't allowed in court, like hearsay or personal opinions. So the judge wants to make sure the jury only considers evidence that been properly presented. Now, judges hope that even if jurors hear something that's not allowed, they remember that the judge told them to ignore it. They also hope that if a juror brings up that information during discussions, the other jurors will remind them that isn't that something they should be considering. So basically, judges want to ensure a fair trial, and they hope that jurors will follow their instructions and only consider the evidence that's been allowed. The next is additional factors. So far, we've talked about how things like eyewitness testimony, how the defendant looks, and what the judge tells the jury can affect their decisions. But there's more to it. So, researchers are also looking at other things that might influence jurors. So, harsh punishments. Would jurors be less likely to find someone guilty if the punishment is really severe, like the death penalty? It seems like they might be, so maybe it's a good strategy for prosecutors to avoid seeking the death penalty in some cases. So, experience versus new jurors. Do jurors who have served on juries before judge things differently than those who are new to it? It seems like experienced jurors might be more careful and thoughtful. So, victims' appearance and suffering. Do jurors judge a defendant more harshly if the victim was attractive or suffered a lot? Research suggests that they might. So, these are just a few of the many factors that can influence how jurors make decisions. It's a complex process, and researchers are still trying to understand all the different things that can affect it. And that's all in my part.